St. Kitts, Nevis, had the nicest place, but I ran from here, man, defend it like a lunch, I say. Now sell out me country, my little paradise. I am a product of the island. I know it's a nice. Wouldn't change if you know what I know. Land of beauty.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 40 Committee presents conversations, reflections, and a way forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today, and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we explore, should St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic?
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park on the outskirts of Charlestown, Nevis. I am Ian Richard, welcoming you to Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. Conversations is a 7-part engagement series commissioned by the Independence Committee. Tonight, we discuss if St. Kitts and Nevis should become a republic. This is a looming topic, particularly given that several of our Caribbean brothers and sisters have taken this bold step, and the popularity of the British monarchy is reportedly fading since the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Our conversation begins now with Attorney General, the Honorable God's Working, Honorable Janelle Nisbet, Senator in the Nevis Island Assembly, His Excellency Sam Condor, former Deputy Prime Minister, and Devon Cornelius, journalist. Welcome to Conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
AG, we want to start with you first of all, and if you could give us an explanation in terms of what is the difference between a republic and what we have now?
Well, what we have now is what you call a constitutional monarchy, where the head of our state is the King or Queen of England, whereas our laws, our supreme law is the Constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis. So we have independence, we have self-governance, but our symbolic head of state still lies in London. That's what we have now. With the republic, you will have what I would say true independence, where the head of state, the office, resides in St. Kitts and Nevis. So the head of state would be either a president or whatever title you give that person, and the country will be wholly removed from the United Kingdom.
So, of course, it may be a discussion that some may say might be a silly question to ask now, but what influenced the constitution of the monarchy that we have currently?
Well, that is what happened with the territories. You have to look at the historical background. The English-speaking Commonwealth Caribbean were British colonies. Step by step, each of those colonies sought independence. We are slightly different. When I say we, I'm talking about the OECS territories. We became associated states. So we got a different status in 1967, became associate states. And then different members of that group of countries became independent separately. Of the OECS territories, only Dominica has republican status right now. It's just the phase approach, how our history evolved. We wanted independence, we wanted freedom to make our laws, we wanted our own constitution, which we eventually got. So we have been, for almost 40 years, on the cusp of 40 years, truly independent in our decision making, in our governance. You can really say the king, being head of state, is symbolic only. The Governor General does not seek advice from the king to perform any functions. The National Assembly, the Nevis Island Assembly, does not have to go to London to ratify any decisions that are made. So we are independent, but there's this symbolic monarchy still hovering over us that keeps us closer to our colonial past. It's only in the region, it's Dominica, Guyana, Trinidad, and most recently Barbados have become republics. And Dominica actually calls itself a commonwealth. But effectively it's a republic. They have a president that is a Dominican. That office resides in Dominica.
Of course, and anyone who can jump in. Would you say that there were any...
Yeah, I would just like to add to that. I agree fully with what Lady said, but it is what I call the consummating the process. It is maturing. The constitutional status that we have now, if we go to Republican, is just like completing the whole process of independence. That does not mean that what that lady said is just symbolic that we have the king now as the head. So it's just symbolic, but I think we should go to the Republican status because it is really completing the process that is full independence. It is to get the decolonization means that you want to remove yourself from a colony that we were under Britain, and now to achieve full independent status, which you go to a republic, consummating the process.
I'm inclined to agree with both the AG and Mr. Konda here. It is an inevitable next step for us to move to republicanism. And if we look at the history of the region, we are one of the youngest independent nations within the Caribbean. So while we were contemplating independence, we would have looked at the models that were existing at the time in the region and saw that they themselves would have moved to the constitutional monarchy. And as a safe, tentative type of people, we want to be careful as we make our movement. So we didn't necessarily want to jump immediately from being a colony to being a republic. We like to take stages, let our individual population have that level of comfort, and so the constitutional monarchy would have provided them with that idea of a safety net of sort. If we look at some of the independence discussions back in the 1960s, you would have seen a lot of the head of states declaring outwardly that, you know, if the Constitution is good enough for the UK, why wouldn't it be good enough for us? So they would have used that to pacify the people that although we want this independent, we can still keep that tie. We're not sending you completely into the unknown. We have you with that safety net. But now we're more evolved as a people. I think we're confident in the education level of our populace. We're confident that we can self-govern. We have been effectively doing it for 40 years. The crown is symbolic, as we've all noted. So we can make that next step to be completely and truly independent in name and in action.
Mr. Host, while there isn't much that I could add to the sentiment shared earlier, I want to agree with the comments that were shared. But you know, this conversation, I think, is one that is needed. I think people of St. Kitts and Nevis have been looking forward to it in an official setting, as they want to hear from leaders, young leaders in St. Kitts and Nevis, their view on whether St. Kitts and Nevis should become a republic. I think it is a topic that has mixed views, mixed opinions, and I look forward to what the other panelists have to share. But should St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic, and the significance of whether constitutional monarchy, what I would say to that is, it is something that our people will be proud of should we become a republic. Thank you.
I have to ask a question from a historical context, however, because we established that we do have a constitutional monarchy now, and we all recognize that it's based on the history, as the age would have explained earlier. But the question was there realistically any other option to consider outside of becoming a republic? As the senator just said, we weren't willing to take that step yet, we want to do it in stages. Anything else that could have become?
You mean when the Commonwealth Caribbean states became independent?
Yes.
Well, I mean, there was a meeting in London, you know. All of the leaders went to a meeting in London. They said, listen, we want to have our independence. The Crown said, sure, we will assist you Get your ducks aligned, work on your constitutions, have discussions amongst your people. We will facilitate it. It was, as Ambassador Conde said, it was the natural progression. So the constitutional monarchy was the first step. It was the first step because this was coming out of being a colony. So you were saying, okay, we want to be able to manage our own affairs, pass our own laws. We don't want to report to a governor who is sent down by the Queen. So let's have this discussion. Let's do it this way. And some have gone to the next step. Just we haven't. And I think it's very symbolic that the mother colony, St. Kitts and Nevis, because we were the first English settlement in the Caribbean, now begins this conversation. Because that will be the full circle. The first English settlement, becoming a republic and leaving, it almost closes that arc, that historical arc from colonization to real independence. And I'm very happy that we're having this discussion now. But, based on what Devon said, yes, there are different views. But there's also another thing we have to take into consideration. When we're discussing fundamental issues like this, to become a republic, when we start to think about the macro ideas about our identity, it should not be isolated. We have a 40-year-old constitution. We have to start thinking, what do we want to see for ourselves in our supreme law? Because yes, you could do like what Barbados did. Barbados simply, they didn't need a referendum, but we'll get into that. But they simply amended. They said wherever it said Her Majesty, it should now say the state, right? And the only substantive change they made are how the president is actually elected. But their Governor General became their president in the process. And then they went about, and they're currently going about their constitutional reform. We have to think about this Republican status as the main item in constitutional reform. Because as a society, 40 years later, you must look at yourself in the mirror and say, have we lived up to the ideals that we set when we created this document? And where do we want to go for the next 40 years? It's almost like you put a marker and you decide what you're going to do from there.
See, and St. Kitts and Nevis, I hope I'm not confusing the issue here, but St. Kitts, Nevis and Anguilla, as you would be aware, we were in the West Indies Federation, and when the dissolution of the Federation in '62, because Jamaica and Trinidad in this very month, August of '62, went into independence, and we were left with the Little Eight, as they call it then, Barbados and the OECS. And so to move forward, the associated status was the next step, right? And we all became associated state. In fact, St. Kitts, Nevis and Anguilla was the first country to become an associated state and was the last to become an independent country. And that happened because of the difficulties that were going on. First with Anguilla, wanting to secede, and the discussion in Nevis about secession, because then Premier Bradshaw said that he will not accept independence without carrying Anguilla and Nevis with him, because anything reverting to a colonial status is anti-progressive, it is retrogressive, and that is not in keeping with the whole thrust of independence. Republican status is really the ultimate, and he will not settle for anything like that. And that is why we took so long to go into independence, because we were not prepared to go independent with Anguilla returning to colonial status, and we were not prepared to go into independence with a division between St. Kitts and Nevis. So again, the Republican status is the ultimate, and St. Kitts set the stage early that this is what we were aiming at when in 1967 we went to the first step of associate status, and with the ultimate aim to become an independent status, a Republican status at the end.
Do you think having a Governor General, going back to the constitutional monarchy at the time, having a governor general that would have been chosen from amongst people. You know, the AG just spoke about a governor being sent by the king or the queen, whoever it was back then. I didn't know she was on this role for quite a number of decades. Do you think having a governor general chosen from amongst the people made it a bit more palatable as well to have to prop up the constitution and monarchy for persons to accept it?
I don't necessarily believe that per se, because you have crown colonies around us still. You have Anguilla, who has a governor who is appointed by the UK. They're not from Anguilla, and a lot of individuals in Anguilla would still say they are not ready to move away from being a crown colony. They like that support. They like that it's someone external that has no bias from the local population. And so they find comfort in that. We, a different subset of people, find comfort in the fact that our Governor General is local and that you can see yourself as a young boy or girl and think that you can aspire to that position. In crown colonies, that's not the case. You can't aspire to become the governor. You can maybe become the premier, but not that high level. So I think it adds comfort here, having a Governor General locally, but while they act as the head of state, they are simply a representative of the head, which is the crown, which is far removed in the United Kingdom. And I think we're at that time where we want to be able to see, as young people, we want to be able to aspire to the highest position in the land, our land.
I swear in new citizens. So like, for instance, persons who've been here for 14 years, whether it's St. Kitts or Nevis. So they come to my office, and the Bible comes out, and I have this sheet for them to sign, and I read it out, and it's read back to me, and it says, I swear allegiance to King Charles III. And it's almost something, I look into their eyes when they say it, and a lot of them are confused, because they didn't anticipate that is what people can anticipate. Like when we took our oath of office, we swear allegiance. Mm-hmm. People have seen that before, but you don't think that if you're becoming a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, you have to formally take a Bible and swear allegiance to King Charles III. Some of the territories have changed the oath in the Constitution, but I think it's Ambassador
Sam is good.
Ambassador Conda said, we have to decide whether we're going to close that circle, that real, true independence from the UK. And it's symbolic, yes, but it has a deeper meaning for people. You know, it goes to your core. Mm-hmm. And when you have a history like we have of colonization, slavery, we are now people who are capable of managing our affairs. We're educated people. Our politics has evolved. Our body politics is now mature. We have strong institutions, right? We have leaders who we can look at on TV and aspire to be like. And we can manage our own affairs. We have to close that circle. We have come to the point where we have to say, it's now our time. We can manage our affairs, we can manage our own money, we can govern our body politic. Let us do it. I am all for this, but I guess later we'll talk about the mechanisms of it. Timing and mechanisms is important, education is important.
Right, because we still want to look at
But it is so natural. It is like growing up. How could you stop growing up? How could you stop maturing? It is a natural step.
But you might view it as a natural step, but we also have to recognize that there are individuals out there who don't know, they don't quite understand the difference.
So education.
They don't understand what the monarchy does for us or doesn't do for us. So if you take when Australia would have had their referendum many moons ago to decide whether to become a republic, one of the slogans used to help defeat that vote was, if you don't know, vote no. And that worked because a lot of the average population simply did not understand the consequences.
It is just education.
So we can't sit here as academics and say, it's a natural progression.
So it is education.
Yes, I agree with you. But we have to come down to the level.
Yes.
But I like something that you mentioned, Senator, and I want to jump on that a little bit in terms of your saying, in terms of some of the difficulties that persons had in Australia if they don't know, vote no. Were they given certain assurances to stay with the constitutional monarchy system before they became independent, before we in the region became independent? Were the assurances given by Britain to say that, as the age would have said, get your ducks aligned, we'll be there while you do that?
You mean in terms of them becoming a republic?
As opposed to us choosing to remain, to have the constitutional monarchy remain, as opposed to becoming a republic. Were there assurances that were given at the time?
I honestly can't comment on their process to becoming a constitutional monarchy.
I'm speaking specifically in terms of the region, and Ambassador, perhaps you can shed some light on that. Back then,
Say that again, I didn't.
that Britain gave assurances that if you maintain the constitutional monarchy, the age would have said, you get your ducks in a row and we'll stand by you. Does that indicate that there were assurances that were given?
No, well, you achieve your independent status or your advanced status by negotiations. That is what the talks in London was about in 1982. In fact, before we reached London in 82, there was a green paper written by the late Limo, and then there was a white paper by the government about the constitutional proposals, and those were the proposals that were negotiated at London, and all the things that were to go in and not to go in. For example, 113, that was a negotiating point as to whether we'll have in that or not. Revenue sharing. In fact, things like the integrity in public life, that was a constitutional proposal presented by the Labour Party then. I mean, that was rejected. Here, 40 years later, we're talking about the integrity in public life. and so the constitutional proposal and arrangement is based on mutual discussions. You presenting your proposal, what you will have in, and the British government will agree or not agree. In fact, there was so much disagreement about the constitutional proposal that the Labour Party delegation did not sign the constitutional document. They walked out of the thing, because that's how the whole arrangement, the constitution comes about, by mutual agreement from the parties.
Yeah, and on that point, if St. Kitts were to say, like Jamaica has said already, Jamaica has announced
St. Kitts and
publicly,
Nevis.
we are going to become a republic.
St. Kitts and Nevis.
St. Kitts and Nevis, sorry. sorry, Minister. I'm from Nevis, you know. Sorry.
No, you should add it.
If Jamaica said we're going to become a republic, we're going to start our process, it becomes a diplomatic negotiation as to what relationship you're going to have with the UK going forward. Simple as that. Minister of Foreign Affairs to Minister of Foreign Affairs, or the Governor General to the King, say, listen, we're going to start this process. We still cherish our historical relationship. We hope to continue to have a good relationship. We hope that you will sponsor scholarships and provide us with experts in different fields where we don't have them. And we want to keep a connection. So you start the diplomatic process from there. But a point that Sam raised, I think this is a very important part of this discussion, because we can't do it just academically. In order to become a republic, we have to have a referendum. In order for a referendum to be successful, as Nevis well knows, you need 2/3 in St. Kitts, and well, Nevis is different. You need 2/3 for a general referendum to change certain aspects of the Constitution, like becoming a republic. You need 2/3 of the votes in St. Kitts and 2/3 of the votes in Nevis.
To become a republic?
To become a republic.
You want 2/3 vote in St. Kitts?
Yes, yes.
I thought it was just 2/3 across St. Kitts.
No. How the language is, 2/3 in St. Kitts, 2/3 in Nevis. Let me tell you, Ambassador, the division politicians who negotiated the 1983 Constitution protected Nevis big time. No doubt about that. It is clear from my reading of the Constitution that there was a lot of politics happening in those rooms, and because of the makeup Premier Parry will be very much aware of this, because of the makeup of the government at the time. Power was held by the Nevis politicians at the time.
The balance of power.
The balance of power. So when they said this had to happen, it had to happen. So it has to be a federal decision, no doubt about it. A referendum is very difficult to be successful. I sat in a constitutional reform conference a couple months ago in Barbados with all the constitutional reform experts in the region. And I can't remember her name, but a council from St. Vincent was talking about their experience when theirs failed. They were talking about when the Grenada referendum failed, and all the different failures of referendum, because naturally partisan politics gets involved. So when you made that point, I said, you know what, now is the time to raise it. I don't have a problem with referendum. Let me tell you why. We are a constitutional democracy. A democracy means the power lies with the people. In order for there to be a fundamental change about how you do business as a body politic, you must have the signing of 66.6% of the people. That is persons who have CXCs or not. That is the fisherman or the accountant. You have to have buy-in from the majority of the population. And it has to be fundamental changes that cross the partisan political divide. So for example, CCM, NRP, St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, PLP, and PAM all say we have no issue with becoming a republic. You put it to the people, and no one campaigns against it, because referenda typically fail when there's a campaign against it. You don't understand it, say no. Right? But that is how it should be. When you're changing your fundamental core supreme law, it should be something that is non-controversial. Not that it's not controversial in the essence of it, but is not politically controversial. Meaning there's enough percentage of your population who understand and are willing to vote yes. It's difficult. Some experts in the region don't think, because of our tribal politics of the day, that many of our territories will be able to be successful. I disagree. I think the duty when you put a referendum in a constitution is that your duty is to educate first. You educate and then make your politics more mature.
You see, I'm really, I really thought, I don't understand why to go to the Republican status would want 2/3 in Nevis and 2/3 in. I thought that related to the secession of Nevis.
Fundamental changes to the Constitution.
But that is too divisive and transactional. You can't be 2/3 and say, the country is St. Kitts and Nevis. If you're having a referendum to go to a city, well, 2/3 of the population of St. Kitts and Nevis, why you want 2/3 in St. Kitts and 2/3 in Nevis?
Because we understand that while we're together, we are still different people. And so a population in St. Kitts, the 100% of the population might be inclined to go and become a republic. And they might make up very well the 60+ % that you need, whereby 0% of the population in Nevis wants that. Do you think it would be representative for us in Nevis to have to move towards being a republic if nobody on the island wants it, but because the majority was able to be made up from the St. Kitts votes, then we have to just be tugged along with it?
Well, Janelle, I wanted to reinforce the points that were made earlier on education. So Sam is not sitting well with you that there has to be 2/3 in St. Kitts and 2/3 in Nevis, right? But this is where education comes in. People, Kittitians and Nevisians must know what the whole process is about before we go forward. So while I agree with growing up, education has to be a part of it, as you said.
Mr. Cornelius, that's a good point that you made, and I actually want to come to you next with the follow-up question, but it's the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a quick break right now, and be back with more of our conversation. Stay with us.
the thing about the Constitution, eh?
St. Kitts, Nevis, had the nicest place, but I ran from here, man, they feel it, like a Lensha say. Now sell out me country, my little paradise, yeah. I am a product of the island, I know where else I wouldn't change if you know what I know. Land of beauty.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 40 Committee presents conversations, reflections, and a way forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today, and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we explore, should St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic? The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 40 Committee presents conversations, reflections, and a way forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today, and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we explore, should St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic? The St. Kitts and Nevis
mentioned, of course, education is important. But here's a question that I have to ask. As someone who represents, the young people, you're in touch with them, and also as a journalist, you have interactions with persons, a wide cross-section of persons. Do young people, do persons care if St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic or not?
It's a very controversial question. The conversations that I've had with people my age and in hosting radio programs and listening to people across St. Kitts and Nevis, I would say we are in the middle. There's a 50-50. There are those who are very passionate about the topic. There are those who are 100% in support of St. Kitts and Nevis becoming a republic. There are others who, as you said, simply, well, not as you said, but they're not interested. For them, it's either here or there, and they don't really care too much about the process. My thing is, though, Mr. Richards, whether they care or not, I think becoming a republic or remaining under the constitutional monarchy as it is now, traditions and divisions at home and abroad would be impacted somehow if we are to remain under the constitutional monarchy or if we are to become a republic. But I am heavy on the education part of it because there is still a lot of things that we are not aware of. When I say we, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and people within my age, they are not aware of in terms of what will St. Kitts and Nevis look like, what will the Constitution look like in terms of if we are to become a republic. And so education must be a part of it. You mentioned the fact that I have been exposed to media and interacting with people. If we are to, and not if we are to, but we must ask the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, are you ready for the country to move forward, as Sam said, to grow up? And hear from them, their views, their opinions, whether they are for, whether they are against.
Can I chime in here for a minute?
Sure.
I feel like we all agree on this panel, so to be devil's advocate a little bit. We agree that we want to move towards being a republic, but we also agree that fundamentally, if we do it, say, like Barbados, nothing really changes other than shifting a governor general to a president. Nothing really significantly changes. And a referendum costs money. It doesn't just happen overnight. It costs thousands and thousands of dollars, that the hundreds of thousands that the public, it is our money, we're using that. So the question would be whether we as a people, is that the best use for our money right now? Do we not have more important issues, education, healthcare, social issues such as poverty, to put that money towards rather than something as symbolic as becoming a republic?
And a follow-up question to that would be, is it just the topic spurring because it is what some would consider a fad? We've seen what happened in Trinidad. We saw what happened in Barbados. We've seen the Prime Minister in Jamaica, the way he declared it so publicly. Some might say that it was embarrassing and not the right time to do it the way he did it in front of the visiting royals who were there. But nevertheless, do you think that what we see happening around the region is fueling the conversation in St. Kitts and Nevis?
Of course, we're integrated as a region. What happens in one will always influence the other. We collectively were joined together historically, and then economically we were joined together, and we still have several organizations that link us. Our ancestors moved between the islands, even currently through free movement. You have individuals from CARICOM and the OECS moving freely. So obviously what happens in one would have a domino effect and influence on the other. So yes, but that doesn't invalidate what the conversation is or the merit of it locally. Sometimes you need something external to spark or trigger a conversation about what you've become complacent about, and we've become complacent about pledging allegiance to an external monarch. When I was sworn in, there was a split second of pause as I gave my oath of allegiance, because I personally believe it should be to the people of Nevis rather than to the king, his heirs and successors.
AG, have you had any discussions with other attorneys general from around the region in terms of those who would have made that transition to a republic?
Yes. I particularly had a discussion in the conference I mentioned, to get some water, with the Constitutional Reform Committee for Barbados. So I have quite a great understanding. They're the most recent. They were November 2021, I believe. And they had a white paper since 1996. And I like to give this example because politics is so amazing. They had a white paper in 1996 saying Bajans are ready to become republic. Governments changed. They eventually joined on to the CCJ. And then the Frondell Stewart, who became the Prime Minister, said, well, Errol Barrow took Barbados to independence. Owen Arthur took Barbados to judicial independence. I'm going to take Barbados to true independence. He never did it. And Mia Mottley, as Prime Minister, ended up doing it. But that's to show you how long it takes. These processes don't happen overnight, because there was some pushback in Barbados to becoming a republic. The leader of the opposition now was actually at the conference I was at, and his position was, you have, as Minister Elizabeth said, you haven't done anything. All you've done is change, effectively, all you've done is change Governor General to President. There's literally been no change in how Barbados is governed. So do you do it just for the symbolism? Also, the challenge there was, you should have done it through referendum, even though your constitution didn't require it. The voice of the people should be who determine whether you become a republic or not. So that was another challenge to that. Some say, well, if you have a problem with the oath, do like St. Lucia, amend the oath.
And Jamaica did that as well.
I think Jamaica amended their oath as well. So they're opposing voices, like there's anything when it comes to democracy. And
Antigua is having that debate currently.
Yeah, Antigua said they're going to determine whether they're going to become a republic.
In the first case, the oath of office.
Yeah. But the conversation I had a conversation with the Attorney General, and I agree totally with him. We're on the same page, and there's some others who disagree. They say referendum was a horrible idea. They say, look at Brexit. You know, that's not for the benefit of the UK, but because of how politics is, and if you have more money and you could pay for more social media, you might be able to convince people to vote a certain way, and you could play on people's emotions. But here I agree that in a fundamental essence of democracy, the people should have the final say. The people are allowed to make bad decisions for themselves. But your duty, if you are somebody who is charged with educating and seeking persons to make the best decision for themselves, is to focus on the education and not bring partisan political politics into the arena. It's hard to do that because we have 5-year cycles of governments, and a referendum is an opportunity for the opposition to jump in and test the waters, and this government will never do anything good for you, and make it emotional. And we have to reach to a point in our maturity where we can say there are certain core fundamental issues that are above party politics.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we want to be a republic that is above party politics? How do we want our president to be elected above party politics? What should the role of the Governor General / President be? Because right now, the Governor General assents to the laws. There's no way for the Governor General to intervene in the executive, really, the true executive. So do you want, like in Trinidad, the president has a little more power? So all of those decisions we have to, these are discussions we have to have. See if there is consensus within the party politics space. Discuss it with the people to see if you want this. You have the inside the newses of the world, the shows, the talk shows, the voices, all those shows. You have people discuss it, and you have.
And people have to understand that it is more than symbolism. It's about your identity.
Yes, yes.
It is about your aspirations. It is about the whole cultural development and advancement. It is not that, it is more than symbolism.
As we speak about the referendum and needing the 2/3 majority, one of the conversations that we had in an episode about 2 weeks ago, and Premier Bransley, who is the leader of the concerned citizen movements here in St. Kitts and Nevis, is the Premier of Nevis. He clearly said that, as we were discussing constitutional reform, that he is opposed to St. Kitts and Nevis becoming a republic. Now, it hints back to the discussion that we had on the referendum, where we're saying that 2/3 of the majority is needed in St. Kitts and also in Nevis to change that. And so there is that risk that is being spoke about in the fact that it can become a difficulty in terms of marshalling people, to mobilizing them towards a specific objective, especially if there is a national leader who disagrees. And not only is he a national leader, he's the Premier of Nevis. He's the one who runs the Nevis Island Assembly here. He was very clear on his opinion.
I have to go back to see, because I really don't understand how we could have a constitutional provision like that 2/3.
You want me to read it to yourself?
Yeah.
I read it several times.
You read it already? Yeah. Okay, all right, okay, stand corrected, but I really don't.
Yes, it says here, sorry, it's 38.3. It says, okay, a bill to alter this section, it must be
change clause.
Yes, it must be tabled. 90 days, at least 90 days must pass. It must get 2/3 of the representatives, not of parliamentarians.
No, of the representatives.
Representatives,
right,
not senators.
Right.
And then after this has been passed by the Assembly, the bill has been approved by a referendum by not less than 2/3 of all the votes validly cast at the referendum in the island of St. Kitts, and 2/3 of all votes validly cast at the referendum in the island of Nevis. So people might be saying, but Sam, if you added it up, if you did it not separately, and you just did 2/3 of everyone, but it's different.
Yeah.
You're right, there might be a sentiment difference in Nevis and in St. Kitts.
Yeah. And that really is my problem with our constitution. I mean, it is what we have, it is what it is, but the constitution, I mean...
You think it's impossible to get that done? That's what it is? You think it's impossible to get a referendum passed?
2,000 Nevis and 2,000 St. Kitts? Yeah.
But if it's something that you say it's so fundamental that everybody should think, yeah, this is the natural progression.
But Senator, the term that the Premier used was that it would be a miracle. He wasn't necessarily speaking about we're becoming a republic at this time. He was speaking about, like I said, constitutional reform, that, for instance, 113, you would need both 2/3 on both islands. But he was saying it would be a miracle.
I mean, miracles happen every day.
No, 113 is Nevis alone.
113
Is Nevis alone.
is Nevis alone.
It's 2/3 on Nevis. That's the secession.
Right, because, yeah.
But it's okay. Here's the plan. Here's the plan here. Let's talk about how we're going to solve it.
Yeah.
What my proposal will be to Cabinet and to Parliament, having sat down in that meeting for 2 or 3 days and heard the issues from Belize in the north all the way down to Guyana on their constitutional reform, I think the best way to do it is you actually have legislation by which a committee made up of persons from a wide cross-section of society sit on. And that committee submits a report every 2 or 3 years. And in addition to that committee, there is an executive arm that is charged with civic education. So there will be persons permanently employed by the federal government, so it won't be just St. Kitts and Nevis, to educate the populace on whatever the reports say. And also to arrange the town halls and the radio shows and so forth to guide the conversation. So you have a wide cross-section of society, well represented, making the, recommendations to Parliament. And in Parliament, they say they make 10, Parliament, the Parliament, the government of the day could say, well, you know, we don't want to waste hundreds of thousands of dollars, knowing that it is likely that these 5 will be challenged vigorously by other political parties. These 5 seem like they would be, let's not talk in the abstract. Let's say, for example, say that committee submits a report that says, St. Kitts and Nevis is ready to become a republic. St. Kitts and Nevis is ready to independently elect their president. St. Kitts and Nevis is ready to have a fixed election date, because that has to go to referendum as well. St. Kitts and Nevis is ready to have an independent election commission, because that would have to go to referendum anyway. And some other decision. And Nevis wants exclusivity over a particular one other area. For example, let's say it's CBI. CBI projects in Nevis wants exclusivity over them. So you have 5, and CCM, NRP, like that. All the parties on St. Kitts like that. But there are other 5 recommendations that would be more controversial, like removing the although I don't think that's entrenched, you know, so let me not even say that, the clause to prevent the Bryant clause. Yeah. So there might be some controversial ones, and then the government of the day could decide, okay.
That's not an entrenched?
That, I don't think that's entrenched. Okay. I don't quote me on that, I didn't check, but that's one of those. Take the 5 to the people. But you say, Sam, you took those 5 to the people, you're guaranteed that you don't get 67 on both islands. 67%. That's what you're saying?
No.
And I think that's what the Premier is saying too. The Premier is saying basically that would be impossible.
With the comments you shared earlier though, right? There's a question that is in my mind, and I think in the minds of people who are not just listening to this program, but people who have had this discussion. Getting to republic status, I think the question in their mind is, how are we to, or how certain are we that the parties in politics would not get into
Impossible.
all of this?
It would.
And do you,
it would.
If I can, do you think that would slow the process of becoming republic?
It will be a force, and you have to hope that the education force at least makes it subside a little bit. They will never overtake it, because there are persons who are ultra political, partisan political. It's good to be ultra political, you know, because politics is about how your society is governed. But ultra partisan political sometimes is not good, because you don't even look out for your own best interests. But we have to some issues as a society that make you who you are as a being, right, are beyond partisan politics.
Exactly.
And referenda, which is, I guess, rightfully so. That's what my belief is. Referenda is there to make sure that the changes that everyone is, well, the majority of society, separate and apart from the partisan politics, can agree on. Because you could win all 8 seats and not get 60 in St. Kitts. You could win all 3 seats in Nevis and not even, you don't even need close to 67%. You know? So you realize how hard that is. It's very hard.
The question that also has to be considered as we speak about having an education campaign. In the United States, you know, they often say that the nominee of the parties is often the one who spends the most money. So then the question comes in then, is it a matter of who has the bigger bank purse as well, that they're able to influence the decision? If you're going to have the sensitization campaign, you're going to run a campaign that says vote no. Is it dependent on who has the bigger purse?
I mean, that definitely influences it because money talks. you have to be able to use that funding to be able to put up signage, to run ads, to have that information on loop in the minds of the people, to access remote communities, to just be able to go around with megaphones in the community. If your message can reach individuals over and over and over again, then you're more likely to convince those individuals versus if they see it once on a billboard and never see it again. That message is not ingrained in their mind. So money helps. It's not the only thing, but it definitely is a significant force.
Grenada had some very uncontroversial referenda questions, you know, like, you know, changing the name. I mean, to include Carriacou, like, no, it would be like if St. Kitts and Nevis was St. Kitts, and we were just going to formally recognize it as Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Saint. You know, some simple decisions, and none of them. And you know when it was done? It was done after a 15-0 government.
After
15-0. Mm-hmm. It was done when Prime Minister Mitchell had won all 15 seats in Grenada. He did the referendum and the referendum failed. So referendum is very hard. I don't think it's impossible. I'm not on your side with the impossible, Sam. But you also have to inspire people to come out. People come out when they want to vote, when they wanted to vote for Sam Conda, when they wanted to vote for Premier Parry, when they wanted to vote for Premier Brantley. They came out, right? Because, you know, they want to vote for their leaders. But it's difficult to get people to come out to vote on issues. So then the other question is, do you put it on the ballot? In America, they do that, you know.
And that is what independence is about. Independence is more than party politics, you know, PAM, Labour, CCM, NRP. It's about the aspirations of the people of the country. That is why you can't have a constitution that is so transactional. People...
What are you trying to say about the gentleman in 1983 who were doing this?
What are you? What I want to say about that?
No, I just was done.
Okay.
No, you don't have to say that.
You see, you know, because that is why these things are for posterity. You know, the majority of the people who were at that conference, they are dead, you know. The majority are dead. And they have left us with a constitution now which is killing us.
If you have a referendum in Nevis about whether we should still retain that 2/3 vote, I'm sure it will pass easily.
Yeah, and you see, that is the thing.
No, but he's not talking about just that clause. He's saying what you have to.
The Constitution,
the extensive list of things that requires.
I think that one is it.
Yeah.
You can't. People have to understand that. We have to educate people to understand that. You know, it's like the Anglicans. I don't know who are Anglicans here, but the Anglicans have a hymn. They are the first stanza. You know, and if we have people around the God, they said, in Christ there is no east or west. In Him there is no north or south. It is one great fellowship of love that will benefit the whole wide world, and that's what constitution is supposed to be. Not PAM and Labour and CCM and NRP. It is about, you know, whole felt of love for the country, moving all of us as one. When you go to vote for a party, for a government, that's a different thing. But the constitution, you put not only for youth, but for generations yet unborn. You can't condemn the unborn to failure before they start.
And something else to consider as well, lady and gentlemen, is the sentimental aspect of it. We have the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force. We have His Majesty's Prison. His Majesty's Customs and Excise Department. You're talking about removing names, removing historical symbols, perhaps, maybe the Queen Victoria monument there at Baker's Corner. I'm not sure how far we would go. But these are the conversations that would have to be had. And persons, of course, like I said, the sentimental value of these things. Mr. Cornelius, perhaps you can jump in here, and of course anyone else can share their opinions as well.
But I think, Mr. Richards, if we are to become a republic, those things should change. I mean, you can't grow up and be wearing small clothes.
So that is the question. Would people be open to having those things? Is that something that would sway the emotions of people as well?
I think so, but to go back to the point that Janelle made earlier about, you know, having the money and the campaigning, it boils down to not just the education part of it, but influencing people. And so making those changes, I think some, as I said earlier, you're going to have a split. Some are going to be in favor of it. Others are not going to be in favor of it. But I think it boils down to the education part of it and really helping the people of St. Kitts and Nevis to understand why we're doing this. We can't become a republic if this is still the same way, if that is still the same way. You have to completely grow up.
I think one of the good things about the journey to becoming a republic is, from individuals I've spoken to, I haven't gotten this sense from a large number of people that anyone is passionate, per se, about retaining the crown. There are individuals who are passionate about becoming a republic, and then there are a large chunk of individuals who are just indifferent. So it's easy to sway indifferent people who just need information versus to sway individuals who are passionately opposed to becoming a republic. And I think that's a small section of people, at least that's my perception.
Well, the Prime Minister has said publicly, I think he said it in his interview with BBC, that the people decide. So I think where people need to, I don't know if there'll be a formal announcement, that is for him to decide, but I think people need to start preparing for the day when they'll get an option to go into the booth and say yes or no to St. Kitts and Nevis becoming a republic.
And so that also begs the question in terms of the relationship that St. Kitts and Nevis will have with the Commonwealth, with the Privy Council, and several other institutions. And we'd want to discuss that, but we are almost at the top of the hour, so this will be a good time for us to take a break and continue the conversation.
St. Kitts, Nevis, had the nicest place, but I ran from him and they feel it like a Lensha say. Now sell out me country, my little paradise. I am a product of the island. I know where else I wouldn't change if you know what I know. Land of beauty.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 40 Committee presents conversations, reflections, and a way forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today, and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we explore, should St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic? The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 40 Committee presents conversations, reflections, and a way forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we explore, should St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic?
Welcome back to Conversation, Reflections, and the Way Forward. We continue our conversation on should St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic, and we are joined by the Honorable Attorney General Garth Wilkin, Senator Janelle Nisbet in the Nevis Island Assembly, His Excellency Sam Condor, former Deputy Prime Minister, and journalist Devon Cornelius. So before we took the break, we discussed some of the institutions that come along with being a constitutional monarchy, and the biggest one, I would say, would be the Commonwealth. There are persons from St. Kitts and Nevis who I know felt pride in seeing the flag of St. Kitts and Nevis being displayed in the UK during the funeral for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, during the coronation for His Majesty King Charles III. And so that came with being a part of a former colony of the UK, Britain in the back then.
Question is, are we looking at the Commonwealth realm or the Commonwealth of nations? Because there are differences between those two. So you have the Commonwealth realm, which would still include those countries that retain the crown as their head of state. And if we move to become a republic, we can still maintain our status within the Commonwealth of Nations. So we are still a part of the Commonwealth Games. We still have access to all the support that might be able to provide. So that's not a disadvantage if we are discussing the movement.
You don't lose that.
No. Prior to, I think, 2007, if I'm not mistaken, you would have had to reapply for entry, but no, that is not even my case, so you just maintain your status. It doesn't even change.
Commonwealth is an important institution, in my opinion. 56 nations. Nations are coming in. The African nations were not part of the Commonwealth because they were French. Cameroon, I think Gabon just had a coup a couple of days ago, and now members of the Commonwealth. So they're seeking to come in because of the common ideas, and they have a very good structure based in London to assist. We have some of the laws that we have put to Parliament we took some information from Commonwealth model laws. So I think those country diplomatic unions are good. I don't think even if you become a republic you leave.
You don't
because
leave,
there are benefits and the historical benefits, commonalities. It's amazing. There's so many commonalities with African, the English-speaking African countries more so. You'll be surprised. Our structure of St. Kitts and Nevis, how St. Kitts and Nevis works, the only other similar structure in the world is Tanzania and Zanzibar. And I learned that from discussing it with the Attorney General from Rwanda. He said, how does St. Kitts and Nevis work? I said, this is how it works. They have their own Nevis Island administration, their own assembly. They have certain matters within their exclusive domain. There's certain matters that are federal matters, but they sit in the federal parliament. He said, but that's just how it's done in Tanzania. Right? So, it was very intriguing to see how their system is done. And I think if there's any constitutional reform that we do, we can look at what they have done, because they have a more modern federal system than we do. So there are other commonalities you can get, or other information you can get from the Commonwealth that I think would be helpful. There's a historical connection to the UK. I mean, it is what it is. The questions as to whether you change names, Warner Park, Mr. Warner was the first settler. He saw St. Kitts and Nevis on his way back to England and said, well, wow, they have tobacco growing there. They're fertile soil. We should explore whether we should take it from the French. Sir Thomas Warner came back with a ship and decided that yes, St. Nevis is a good place to settle, first British settlement. Donated lands in Bastia for a sports facility. We have to have these tough discussions that are being had in different countries, you know, about removing monuments. Barbados removed the monument of Lord Nelson. Are we going to change one apart? That is a conversation we need to have.
Yeah, but I don't see that's tough decision. It's just education and tell people, you know, you understand. I mean,
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence.
And Kim Collins and all these sporting people. I mean, you know, we begin to promote this.
It might not be hard for me and you, Ambassador Conda, but for some people, they might have a different opinion.
Yeah, but changing the name is not down to everybody. Changing the name is a policy decision.
Mr. Cornelius,
naming our streets. I mean, all those things are policy decisions that must be taken.
But those should reflect the desire of the people. I'm not saying it's not the desire. I'm just saying you're saying it's just policy. But your policy should always be based on what the population is kind of asking for.
Yeah, but we have an obligation to enlighten people and to get them to understand what is in their interest, you know. That's what politics is about. It's about leading and advocating and, you know, and directing. That's what it's about. Just wait to hear what people tell you, what they want.
Ambassador, let's hear from Mr. Cornelius.
I understand what Sam is saying.
I understand.
For Garth and Janet, I don't think the people of St. Kitts and Nevis are going to be, if I could use the word, outraged over these changes. You mentioned the change in Barbados. I don't think we're going to be outraged. Yes, there are going to be some who will oppose it or question it, but if you are to look at the number of people, or how many people, or the percentage of how many people would be outraged or against it, I don't think it's going to be significant for us to even have a discussion about it. That is my view on it.
For the record, I agree. You know, I'm just making sure that as policymakers, we don't take it for granted. Okay. I know we are supposed to lead, but we also have to listen very carefully and not get to the point where we start thinking that we're elite and somehow knows better what's better for the general population.
I'm not saying dictate.
I think there's always a very thin line after we've made enough policies. We start over time believing that we know better and taking it for granted that we have to listen to the people.
I understand what you're saying in general, because this topic of whether St. Kitts and Nevis should become a republic, I think it's a delicate one, and maybe we want to ensure that we touch or cross all our T's and dot our I's and ensure that we give everybody, every citizen, a fair chance to lend their voice. But at the same time, while Garth mentioned earlier that it will be a difficult process, I think when you look at those, what I think are small matters, make it more difficult.
Yeah.
You know?
If you make the issue more complex, that is when you're going to, referendum is going to fail.
Yes.
Yeah, so it may take us.
But I also take the point that what Ambassador is saying is people elected, people like Ambassador, to do work for them.
I appreciate that.
So don't just bully and do it, but you explain this is why we're doing it, this is why it's in your best interest.
Yes.
Because a change of a name of a park might not be fundamental. So the referendum issues are fundamental. Those sorts of decisions, that's why you say this policy. Let the persons elected to govern.
Does it impact the discussion or the move towards the CCJ or away from the prison conference?
It actually doesn't.
Well, what is the point? What is the point of becoming a republic if you're filing a Court of Appeals in London still?
But you see, that's where you're going. You see, you just mentioned that if you make it a complex issue, then you're more likely to fail.
That doesn't need a referendum.
No, I know. But once you start adding on, if you are going to become a republic, why stick with the CCJ? Why stick with the Privy Council? Then now a set of individuals who would have voted to become a republic are going to be like, well, I don't think that I want to move.
So do you do it first or do you do it after?
I would separate the issues and move with whether we want to become a republic, because as a republic, you can still retain the Privy Council as their highest court of appeal. Trinidad and Tobago has the Privy Council as their highest court of appeal as a republic. So I wouldn't bombard the populace with both decisions at the same time per se. Sometimes we do have to take that gradual approach for something as difficult as getting 67%.
I agree with you totally in terms of the complexity. But if you're going to do it, if you're going to close that to true independence, you don't do it in a piecemeal approach. You do it.
You see, and
you might only get in a piecemeal approach.
When you talk about the Privy Council and the CCJ, the Privy Council, you would have thought people would understand that the access to justice. I mean, it's more difficult to get to the Privy Council if you have a case. You don't think people will understand that it is access to justice is easier for them if it is the CCJ and not the Privy Council?
The problem is you still have a good subsection of individuals who believe that external decision maker, it's better in a sense because there's no bias. There's no influence within the region. They won't be friends with a politician here in Nevis and best buddy with another one in Barbados.
Yes, but we can't have it both ways, you know. We can't say that our people, our legal system is as good and better than anywhere in the world. And then you want to go to the the Privy Council.
But the point that Janelle made, though, Sam, is significant because you're talking about justice.
Yeah, but if you're saying that our justice, our legal people are independent, they're sound, they're the best in the world, we had all the International Court of Justice, we had everything, and our people are these good luminaries. And then when you want justice, you go to England?
Listen, you know, Sam, you know what my presentation to the Constitutional Reform Committee that I spoke to you about was? I'm going to read you what the topic was. Judicial Committee of the Privy Council to CCJ, pros and cons. Why is the CCJ sometimes resisted? Yeah. And what I told that group of people, I said, I suggest it's our duty as the intellectual and political elite to educate our populations and demystify this important regional institution, that is CCJ, to convince them that the arguably most impactful institutional relic retained from our colonial past needs to be vanquished to the history books, and we must move forward collectively with our own final court.
AJ, let me jump in here, because you actually touched on the next topic that I wanted to ask about, which is constitutional reform. Would St. Kitts and Nevis becoming a republic automatically trigger?
No.
Explain.
The gentlemen, I don't think there were any women at the time. I don't know if Dame Mitchum was on the committee that negotiating the Constitution.
No,
okay.
no.
So the gentlemen who went to London in '83 to negotiate our Constitution, for some reason said, well, we don't need a referendum if we want to remove the Privy Council. So to remove the Privy Council as our final court of appeal, it's simply by 2/3 majority of the federal parliament. So if you change the references to Her Majesty and the actual intriguing section which talks about the executive, and the executive is effectively the king, executive authority, I want to read that. The executive authority of St. Christopher and Nevis is vested in Her Majesty, section 51(1) of the Constitution. So if you want to amend those sections, it's wholly independent of the amendments in relation to the final court of appeal.
No, but I was speaking specifically to constitutional reform, meaning the republic, that you would have to change. If you're going to become a republic, would there be aspects in the Constitution that would have to be changed, amended,
yes,
reformed?
so like that section would have to be amended.
Right.
The executive authority, this would have to say the cabinet. For example, everywhere, if you're going to become a president, if you're going to have a president, or whatever name, you can choose a name. President is a typical name. Or every reference to Governor General will have to be referenced to the president. There'll have to be an additional section as to how the president is either elected or selected. And then what Barbados did was, like Her Majesty's prison, everything just dropped. Everything referring to Her Majesty, because Queen Elizabeth was still alive then, was dropped. So there'll actually be like amendments throughout the Constitution that remove references. But that doesn't that is separate to the issue of CCJ versus Privy Council. If we really consider ourselves independent, we have to believe that the legal minds in our region and the decent human beings who became judges in our region are independent enough to deliver justice based on the law, not based on who they had brunch with one day in St. Lucia. Because we're a small society in the Commonwealth Caribbean. I think we're 7 million of us, if that much. And the legal profession is even smaller than that. People know each other. There's some judges in the CCJ who are not West Indians. They have this strong, the CCJ is actually the model court. They have the most technology, they have the best judicial independence infrastructure. There's just this belief, this lack of trust that you're not going to get justice in the highest court. First of all, not every case is going there, but more cases will go there. You have a chance that if you feel justice is not done in the Court of Appeal, you could actually get there more than you could get to the Privy Council. I've appeared before the Privy Council. You have to go and trance through cold London in your jacket, and you sit down in front of law lords who probably never sat foot in Jessop's or Connery. Have no idea what it's like to be a Kittian or Division or West Indian. No idea about our culture, our food, our attitudes, our conversations, the way we talk to each other. Nothing about our culture. And make decisions. That is why so many of their decisions now say, well, we are going to rely on the Court of Appeal on this because they have a greater understanding of the society. Why don't we think that we have people capable of judging our matters? I find it absurd. I think there has been a lack of political will to do it. That has really been the issue. I mean, Trinidad spent millions of dollars to set up the court there, and still
has not adopted.
Yes. Here's another question that I think must be considered as well too. If we were to become a republic, and we speak about constitutional reform in some cases, does it provide an opportunity to more or less update our constitution in the sense that, in the United States they have this Bill of Rights where there are certain inalienable rights that are enshrined in the Constitution. Again, going back to the conversation that we had 2 weeks ago with regard to constitutional reform, the Premier was very passionate about issues that are related to the LGBTIQ community, and there are certain other things that should be updated, arguing that St. Kitts and Nevis 40 years ago is not who we are as a people today. So does it provide an opportunity for us to introduce perhaps something like a Bill of Rights, or to have those sections included where they can be updated?
Don't we have rights in our Constitution?
Yeah, fundamental rights.
It's not called a Bill of Rights.
Updated, right, but updated.
Fundamental rights, yeah.
But to update it to the modern, what's happening right now?
You mean to include the
other rights.
More enlightened thinking, yes.
There's a lot of international pressure for that,
Yeah.
The definition of certain terms.
Yeah, but you see, that is why I'm talking about our culture and identity. I mean, we can't allow international pressure to shape our culture and our identity.
But the question is the identity of the generation almost past the same as the younger generation? So is the identity that you see the same that myself, and I'm going to pretend like I'm still a youth like yourself, is it the same identity of me and Mr. Cornelius? So we might be more passionate about the LGBTQIA rights, and your generation might say culturally that's not us.
Yeah, but you see, that's where the debate comes in, and where you have to decipher what it is as a people, a total people, not section of the people. Not section in terms of politics, in terms of religion, you can't sectionalize that. It is as a people.
I just don't want us to make the mistake, of the senior generation thinking this is not us culturally, and then because that's what you're so accustomed to, you might just think that it's the general view of the population.
You see, what I'm thinking of, right, is the case in Jamaica, where the Americans just they decide that just go ahead, we're sending people together. They wasn't going to do that to another country.
Don't call it names, sir.
Yeah. But they want to do because they're imposing. They will not let us other people come to their person and say they can't do that. They shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Mr. Cornelius, weigh in.
One word. Controversial.
Yes. That wouldn't pass a referendum.
But to piggyback off of what Janelle said earlier, the point she was making, St. Kitts and Nevis 40 years ago, I can confidently say it's not St. Kitts and Nevis today, 40 years later.
Meaning what though? Meaning what?
All across the board.
Yeah.
There are different views from religion to politics to other rights. You mentioned in our constitution where it speaks to fundamental rights that may need some brushing up. So I would want to be an advocate for ensuring that the views and opinions that St. Kitts and Nevis 40 years later shares are reflected in our constitution should we have constitutional change.
I mean, we just discussed about whether there were any women in the room when you were designing this constitution. 50% of the population did not have any input or representation. So if we can't consider that it's reflective at this time.
There are certain values.
Values of a subsection of men.
No. I'm talking about values.
They would have had inputs in the white paper and so forth. They would have been, one thing about St. Kitts and Nevis, sorry, not to cut you off. One thing about St. Kitts and Nevis, our civil society organizations chime in. And they were asked what to include. So whereas there might not have been a woman in that 40 years ago going to London, there would have been views of women submitted towards the drafting of the Constitution.
I would prefer have one going to London.
Of course. Half should be. Half should be. But for a practical perspective, my view on this is short. I think that our fundamental rights in our Constitution is strong. Constitution is a living document. It did not die in 1983.
Should go.
It can be interpreted by the courts differently. So as simple as this. Whereas every person in St. Christopher and Nevis is entitled to fundamental rights and freedoms, that is to say the right whatever his or her race, place of origin, birth, political opinions, color, creed, or sex, but subject to the rights of others, shall be protected. So you can expand those definitions to include that community. Let the court do that. Let the court do that, because you will never, I can tell you, so I agree with Sam on this one, you could never, in such a Christian society like ours, get fundamental sexual orientation.
And you don't want to write those things into your constitution.
You don't want to write that. But
why would you write in things such as buggery into your constitution? Why
no, it's not in the constitution.
Oh, okay, into your laws.
But it was struck down. It was struck down by the court.
Yes, but it was struck down. I'm saying, why would you write those in the first place?
Because it's a different time.
Here's a question. How does becoming a republic change, or will it change the nature of politics in St. Kitts and Nevis?
Change the nature of politics?
The face of politics, the nature, the structure of politics in St. Kitts and Nevis, the way we have functioned for the past 40 years.
I think it would depend on our transition to becoming a republic, whether we do it piecemeal like Barbados and just swap out and swap in, or whether we go for a more comprehensive approach to changing over to becoming a republic, whether we significantly alter how you would select or elect a president if we choose that as a head of state. If we made that a general population elected position, then that has a significant impact on the politics of the country. versus if it just becomes similar to how we nominate Governor General.
And you'd see the same AG for Parliament?
My dream, my hope, is that we can do a fulsome constitutional reform process where this generation creates a constitution that will last for another 40 years that we can be proud of. I do not like the piecemeal approach at all. I believe that there are certain fundamental issues that have arisen in the last 40 years that we know must be resolved. And I'm hoping through education that we can be mature enough as a people to, if there's referendum, to resolve some of the fundamental issues so we can be proud of what our body politic will be for the next 40 years. That is my dream. I'm charged with leading that task. So I'm hoping I can see it happen. It's going to take a while. We're looking at least a decade. It's too complex to just do it in a couple of years. You have to really reprogram some people's heads, but we really do need a new constitution, and I hope within the next few years it can be done. And it will change, to you answer your question, it will change the way our politics is. We will not have a situation where we have to create a constitution where there's no situation where a person can run a government with a minority of seats. It just doesn't make sense in how our constitutional structure.
Ambassador, before you chime in, let me get Mr. Cornelius.
Mr. Richards, to your question, a sense of freedom, in my opinion. I think, and I'm speaking for the accountants, lawyers, fishermen, people my age. No longer, I think this is what the people will be thinking, no longer am I voting for Sam to swear allegiance to the Queen or the King. I'm voting for Sam to swear allegiance to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I think that is significant.
Yes, more significant.
I attended the inauguration in St. Kitts for the government, the federal government last year. And when Garth was swearing allegiance to...
I've done it many times, remember?
I mean, you hear people in the crowd still talking about it, mumbling about it, making noise about it. So I think that is significant. So no longer am I want to reiterate that point, voting for Sam to swear allegiance to the King, but I'm voting for Sam to swear allegiance to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. That is important.
Yes.
You want to say something, Ambassador?
Yeah, I wanted to say, on a further point now, that the thing about the Constitution, right? We have to, as a people, understand that we are writing a document, not for your political advantage or for your interest. We're writing a constitution is a document that you have to have agreement. You have to have agreement. I mean, this constitution was written, like I said, with the Labour Party delegation not signing it. That's a bad start. In terms of the proposal for the white paper that was discussed in Parliament, Parliament broke up. The Mays removed. Parliament suspended. When Parliament was reconvened, the opposition ain't had a Parliament going on. How you could write a constitution for people? For that, we have to think that something beyond party politics, and then we have to find a way. If we had sat down together, the people, take time. Don't just go to the constitution because you want to become the first prime minister, or you want to become this. It is a document for posterity. And so when we go back to this new country, that's how it has to be. Sit down, educate people, the town hall meetings, what this is about. This is not about us, the future generations.
E.G., we are almost out of time. I'll give you the final word.
I think we all agree that constitutional reform is needed. We have to just decide if we're going to do it piecemeal, if we're going to do the symbolic version, if we're going to do a wholesome version. I think it's clear from the leaders of the governments on both islands that we have to negotiate. We have to put it to the people. And in order to put it to the people and get a result that is not partisan political, you have to educate. So I think the key is education. A program like this is education. People need to understand about their rights and their civic responsibilities and the Constitution. So we need to keep up activities and conversations like this consistently so that people can understand what does it mean to be a Kittitian and division? What does it mean to be independent? What does it mean to be a republic as opposed to a constitutional monarchy? So it's important to have these discussions. I'm very happy. I learned a lot during this discussion. I'm very happy that I came. And I hope that people can chime in on what their views are. I personally feel that if in 5 days we went to a referendum on whether to become a republic, you would get the 2/3 on both islands.
You will get it?
I believe so.
If you do that when is it?
After this discussion. But the reason I say that is because I believe that people, there's a general belief. I believe, because I used to be like Devon, I used to host radio shows and get the callers in and discuss different topics. I believe there's this. Some people are offended, as Minister Nisbet said. There are a lot of people who are offended by the thought of swaying allegiance to the king, but there are not many that are offended by the thought of becoming truly independent.
Right, we're out of time, but one question, and I just want a yes or no answer from each of you before we leave. Within the next 10 years, do you think, given the prevailing forces, the political forces, and AJ, I'm not sure if you would want to weigh in on this, but do you think that we will have a referendum in terms of should St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic, yes or no, within the next 10 years? Mr. Cornelius,
next 10 years?
Yes, Mr. Cornelius, we'll start with you. Yes or no?
Oh boy. If I could put in a short plug first, though. As a journalist, we were taught not to ask yes or no questions, so it's kind of hard for me to answer this one, but I would say yes.
Ambassador?
If we have the next 10 years?
Yes.
We have to, yes.
Senator?
I do not believe so, so no.
Yes, because we need to become a sustainable island state, and our Prime Minister has said he's going to put the decision to the people. So yes.
And we leave it right there. Mr. Cornelius, journalist, Ambassador Sam Condor, Senator Janelle Nisbet, and Attorney General Gus Wilkins. Thank you so much. This was a very interesting and informative discussion. And I referenced the Premier so much, it's so unfortunate that he wasn't on the stand to give his thoughts on the pages. But we'd like to thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us for this edition of Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. I'm Ian Richards. Be sure to join us next week. Thursday, we'll be back in St. Kitts at the Kuno Conference Center, where we discussed 40 years and beyond.
St. Kitts, Nevis, had the nicest place, but I run from here, man, defend it like a Lensha say. Now sell out me country, my little paradise, yeah. I am a product of the island. I know it's a nice. Wouldn't change if you know what I know. Land of beauty.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 40 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today, and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we explore, should St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic?